Before you listen to the audiobook Murder in Belver City, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share to show your support. Thank you. Murder in Belver City, Episode 1, The Mysterious Clue. Belver City is a small, quiet town surrounded by dense forests. It has a peaceful atmosphere, but there's a sense of mystery and danger lurking beneath the surface. Tall trees and rolling hills define the landscape. However, when a murder occurs, the silence of the forest makes everything feel even more eerie. The townspeople are shaken when news spreads about Nina's body being found. After Nina's body is discovered, fear quickly spreads. People become anxious, knowing that a murder has taken place in their quiet community. Emma, a young reporter already working in the area, is invited to join the investigation after the police discover Nina's body, which had severe injuries. The air around the forest is thick with tension. Occasional animal sounds break the silence, adding to the feeling of unease. "Rick! Rick!" a voice calls out, cutting through the quiet. A police officer walks up to him and says, "We need your help examining the scene." Rick, a key detective, is called in to search for clues. Emma notices Rick standing next to a police car, his uniform crisp and serious. Beside him stands Zoe, Nina's close friend. She looks nervous and worried. Rick turns to Emma and waves her over to the crime scene. "Of course," Emma says eagerly, "but I need to know what's going on. What happened here? What's the story behind this murder?" Rick gives a faint smile. "There's not much we know yet, but Nina's body shows signs of a violent attack." As Emma moves closer to the scene, she feels a chill. Nina's body had been left in a brutal state. Officers are busy gathering evidence while Emma stares at the lifeless form. "This feels familiar," Emma mutters to herself. "But I can't quite figure out why." Rick and Zoe exchange confused glances, but remain curious about what Emma is trying to say. "What do you mean?" Rick asks. "Have you seen something like this before?" "Yes," Emma replies, still unsure. "Something in my memory. This place looks familiar." Rick nods, but is still puzzled. "We need to work together and gather as much information as we can. There may be something here that helps solve this case." The investigation continues as Emma tries to connect the dots. She feels haunted by a sense that something from her past is tied to this murder. Meanwhile, Rick begins carefully examining Nina's body for more clues. At the same time, Zoe is being questioned about her relationship with Nina. "Zoe," Rick asks, "do you know anything about Nina? Did you have any problems with her?" Zoe stays quiet for a moment, then softly responds, "No, we were always close friends." But Zoe's answer raises suspicion in Emma. She notices a hint of unease in Zoe's expression and feels like something is being held back. Emma walks deeper into the forest, searching for more clues. As she ventures further, her memories begin to surface. Slowly, she starts to recall something familiar about the area. "It's becoming clearer," Emma whispers to herself. "This place. I've been here before." As she tries to connect the memories, she realizes that what she's remembering is eerily similar to what she's seeing now, as if she's witnessed something here before. "What is this?" Emma asks herself, as a chilling realization starts to sink in. Nina's murder is starting to reveal dark secrets hidden within Belver City. As Emma tries to unravel the mystery, a growing sense of dread begins to overwhelm her. Murder in Belver City, Episode 2, Shadows in Memory. The next morning, the people of Belver City are still on edge. The discovery of Nina's body has left the town terrified, as the identity of the killer remains unknown. This uncertainty adds to the pressure on Rick, the detective assigned to the case. Rick is examining the crime scene thoroughly. Dressed in his police uniform, he appears focused and calm, despite the anxiety he feels inside. Emma, a journalist involved in the investigation, remains at the scene. She senses the tension and tries to gather more information. She understands the importance of the investigation and feels that something is off. "Do we have any new leads?" Emma asks. Rick stops his examination and looks at her. "No clear evidence yet, but we're still gathering information. Remember, this investigation is still in its early stages." Emma nods, feeling the weight of the case. Meanwhile, Zoe is providing information about the deceased Nina. "Zoe," Emma asks, "can you tell us about your relationship with Nina? Do you have any more details about what happened recently?" Zoe, visibly stressed, shifts nervously as she speaks. "Nina and I were close friends. We used to talk often, but lately she seemed different. She was hiding something from me. I had the feeling she was being threatened." Rick writes notes in his notebook while Emma processes Zoe's words. "Zoe, can you tell us more? Do you know if anyone might have had problems with Nina?" "I'm not sure," Zoe responds anxiously. "Nina was a good person with no known enemies. But recently, she became secretive and worried, which made me uncomfortable." "Understood," Rick says with determination. "We need to explore every angle. Thank you for your information." Emma steps away from the investigation, reflecting on what Zoe said. She knows finding the truth won't be easy, but can't stop thinking about potential clues that might solve the case. She heads back to the forest, the crime scene. She tries to think about anything that might have been overlooked the previous day. The forest remains quiet, but the sense of tension lingers in the air. "I need to find something," Emma says to herself as she walks deeper into the forest. "There has to be something we missed." As she moves further, she finds a long trail of blood on the ground. Emma is startled. She hasn't seen anything like this before. "What is this?" Emma murmurs as she photographs the blood with her camera. "This might be an important clue." Emma follows the blood trail, which leads her to a fallen tree. "The blood trail ends here," Emma notes, standing in front of the fallen tree. "It seems like we're getting closer to a discovery." At that moment, Rick and Zoe arrive at the spot where Emma is standing. Rick examines the blood trail and the fallen tree. "Did you find anything?" Rick asks. "The blood trail seems like a clue," Emma replies. "But it's still unclear what it means." Rick nods. "Good job. Thank you for finding this clue. We'll investigate the blood trail further." Zoe stands nearby, looking worried as Rick and Emma continue their investigation. She struggles to control her emotions. "I hope you can solve this case quickly," Zoe says sadly. "I don't want anyone else to become a victim." Rick and Emma nod in agreement. The examination of the blood trail continues. Murder in Belver City, Episode 3, The Mystery in the Forest. As the investigation into Nina's murder continues, Emma, the reporter who has started sensing something unusual, begins to search for lost memories from a car accident. Emma is sitting at her desk in her apartment, looking stressed as she tries to organize her thoughts. The missing memories from the car accident bother her, and what troubles her the most are recurring dreams. "Why am I seeing these images? It feels like I've been there before," Emma mutters to herself. The memories Emma sees are images of a dense forest, shadows moving, and the sound of wind rustling through the trees. These images seem to connect her to the events that happened in the forest. "I need to find answers," Emma thinks as she picks up her notebook to jot down her thoughts. Meanwhile, Dave, a young man who looks stressed and confused, is brought to the police station for questioning. Rick, who is investigating Dave, the person with a connection to Nina and a primary suspect in the case, asks, "Dave, do you know that you're a suspect in Nina's murder? Can you tell us where you were on the day of the incident?" Dave, looking anxious and trembling, replies, I wasn't there. I was working, and I have proof that I was at work during that time. Are you sure? Rick asks. Because we found traces of you at the scene, and witnesses saw you in the area. That's not true, Dave denies. I had nothing to do with this. I love Nina. I wouldn't hurt her. At this point, Emma revisits the crime scene. The dream she had still lingers in her mind. Maybe my memories will reveal something, Emma says to herself as she looks around the forest. What is this? Emma mutters as she spots bloodstains and signs of a struggle. I feel like I've seen this before. That night, Emma lies in bed, and the dream starts again. Images of the forest, the sound of the wind, and moving shadows fill her mind. She feels there is something hidden in her memories. Why are my memories showing me these images? Emma wonders aloud while lying in bed. Is there something I'm forgetting? The next morning, she talks to a psychologist specializing in memory therapy. The psychologist suggests trying meditation to stimulate her memories. Meditation might help trigger the memories you've lost, the psychologist explains. It might bring up images or events you've forgotten. Emma begins meditating, closing her eyes and trying to clear her mind. As she enters a meditative state, she starts seeing images of the forest and the events that occurred, but there are no clear clues yet. Murder in Belver City, Episode 4, Hidden Clues. The morning atmosphere in Belver City remained gloomy. A sense of tension and mystery hung in the air. Emma, Rick, and Dave, Nina's grieving boyfriend, were heading to the forest to search for new clues that might bring them closer to the truth. Emma, dressed in a raincoat and boots, was ready for the exploration. She walked ahead with determination, despite her body shivering from the morning chill, but she was resolute. This is where I found the blood last time, Emma said, pointing to the spot. Rick, the determined detective, examined the footprints and objects found in the area. These footprints look suspicious, he said, using scientific tools to investigate. Dave, who was reluctantly accompanying them on this search, had a tense expression. He tried to hide his anxiety. If you find any evidence related to me, please let me know clearly, he said quietly. I know I'm a suspect, but I had nothing to do with this murder. We'll check everything, Rick replied. But for now, we need to focus on what we find in the forest. At that moment, Emma discovered signs of digging. She uncovered a small wooden box buried in the ground, tightly sealed. It looks like there's something inside, Emma said as she opened the box. Inside the wooden box was a letter, with a mysterious watermark and careful handwriting. What is this? Emma wondered aloud as she began to read the letter. Dear Nina, the letter began, we have some issues to resolve. What you have done has put us in this situation, and you must take responsibility. If you do not comply with our demands, the consequences will be severe. Emma read the letter, feeling her stress increase. This is a threat from the killer, she realized. What does Nina have to do with the killer? Rick noticed Emma's shocked expression. You look surprised, he said. Did you find something important? Yes, Emma replied. This letter is crucial evidence. It indicates a threat sent to Nina before the murder. Dave, standing nearby, tried to defend himself. I don't know anything about this. I'm not involved. I've never seen this letter before. Emma paused, looking at Dave with suspicion. You may know or not know, but we need to uncover the truth. This letter might reveal some connections, she said. Everyone then left the forest. Later, Emma and Rick met with Zoe, Nina's close friend, to ask for clues and connections related to the case. Zoe began to act strangely. She seemed anxious and avoided answering questions from the reporters and detectives. There's something I can't tell you, Zoe said, quickly walking away. Emma noticed Zoe's behavior. Why is she acting so strangely? Emma wondered. Does she have something to do with this case? As Emma and Rick returned to the office, Emma couldn't shake the feeling she had from the forest. The discovery of the threatening letter might be the key to solving the mystery. We need to trace this letter, Emma said to Rick while sitting at her desk. It might bring us closer to the truth. Rick nodded. We must uncover the truth and examine every aspect of this case thoroughly. That night, Emma couldn't stop thinking about the threatening letter and Zoe's actions. The tension remained in her mind. She had to find answers and solve this murder mystery. Murder in Belver City, Episode 5, The Clue. In the morning, Emma decided to investigate the conflict between Nina and Zoe in detail. The information she gathered from friends and acquaintances of Nina and Zoe highlighted the tension between them. Zoe appeared to be a suspect. Recently, Nina and Zoe had a severe argument, Rick said, sitting at his desk. According to what we've learned, they often quarreled about money and business management. Emma nodded. That could be a motive for the murder, she said. But we still need to find more clues to confirm our suspicions. She began her interview with Zoe. Zoe seemed tense and cautious. Zoe, do you have any conflicts with Nina? Emma asked in a calm but inquisitive tone. Zoe, sitting in the interrogation room, chuckled lightly as she replied, We'd had some arguments, but we've always been friends, she explained. It wasn't serious enough to lead to murder. Emma showed her displeasure and asked, What were your business conflicts about? Zoe looked down at the floor. It was nothing significant, she said. We had some issues, but we cleared them up. Meanwhile, Emma started to feel that Zoe might be hiding something. She knew the conflict between Zoe and Nina wasn't trivial, but there was still no concrete evidence. Later, Emma and Rick began to follow Dave, who was associated with Nina and seemed suspicious. Dave, we found information indicating you had conflicts with Nina, Rick said. Is there something you're hiding and not telling us? Dave looked anxious. I have nothing to hide, he replied. We had business issues and some personal problems, but it has nothing to do with the murder. I didn't do it. Emma observed Dave's expressions and behavior, considering the possibility that he might be involved in the murder. The next day, she saw Dave and Zoe standing close together, speaking secretly. She tried to get closer to listen in and overheard parts of their conversation. This isn't the time to discuss this, Zoe said in a low voice. We need to be more careful. Everything will be exposed. I know, Dave replied. But we need to do something before it's too late. Emma felt that this conversation might be related to Nina's murder. She tried to take photos of Dave and Zoe as they parted ways. After the incident, Emma and Rick returned to the office. That conversation makes me think there's something we still don't know, Emma said. I believe Zoe and Dave might be more involved in the murder than we think. Rick nodded. We need to investigate the connection between Dave and Zoe and find more evidence to confirm our suspicions. Murder in Belver City, Episode 6, The Forgotten Truth. Emma returned to her apartment, feeling like there was something lingering in her memory that she couldn't quite grasp. I need to uncover the truth, Emma muttered to herself as she sat in the living room. There's something I've forgotten, and it might be related to the murder. She began sifting through the evidence she had collected from the investigation. She looked through photographs, notes, and messages, hoping to find clues about her lost memory. During her search, Emma discovered a storage box filled with old photos and documents that hadn't been reviewed in years. One photo showed her and Nina at a location she couldn't remember. It appeared to be taken on the same night Nina was murdered. As she stared at the photo, Emma wondered, why was I with Nina in that forest at night? While grappling with her own doubts, Emma couldn't ignore Zoe, Nina's close friend, who had recently been acting strangely. Zoe was avoiding contact and seemed to be hiding. Her behavior made Emma suspicious that Zoe might be involved in the murder. One day, Emma, Rick, and Zoe met at a local cafe. Emma noticed that Zoe seemed anxious and uncomfortable. "Zoe, you seem troubled," Emma said gently. "Is there something you'd like to talk about?" Zoe bit her lip, struggling to hide her anxiety. "No, not really. I just feel like everything is so messy," she replied. "It's hard to deal with Nina's loss, my close friend. We need to find the truth," Rick said firmly. "Zoe, you're a suspect in this case." The conversation made Emma increasingly suspicious that Zoe was hiding something and might be connected to the events of that night. That night, Emma dreamed of a frightening scene in the forest, similar to what she had seen in the photo. She saw herself and Nina there, surrounded by darkness and eerie whispers. As she woke up from the dream, she said to herself, "That's the place I've been to. I need to find out what really happened." She began to question whether she herself might be involved in the murder. Murder in Belver City, Episode 7, Clues from Dave. Emma now feels increasing stress. Every day, it seems like someone is watching her. Every sound, every shadow, every movement makes her feel something unnatural. "It could be just my imagination, or maybe I'm seeing things," Emma says, walking through the darkened streets at night. "I need to find the truth, no matter how hard it is." The main suspect now is Dave. New information has made Dave a key suspect in the murder case. Dave, who had a close relationship with Nina, seems to be hiding something. "Dave, you need to come here," Emma calls out as she walks into the local cafe where he works. "We need to talk." Dave, wearing a black vest, looks surprised to see Emma. He appears anxious as he tries to act normal. "Emma, what's going on?" he asks, clearly uncomfortable. "I know you have information about that night," Emma says. "And I know you're hiding something. You're involved in this, and I need to know the truth," Emma continues. Dave pulls out some documents from his bag. "There's something you should know," he says. "But I'm not sure if you're ready for it." Emma, feeling tense, waits to see what truth Dave will reveal. Dave pulls out some papers. "These are notes I found," he begins. "They're related to Nina's death." The documents show details about Dave's contact with Nina on the night of the incident. This information includes text messages and unusual appointments. This makes Emma realize that something isn't right with what she previously thought. "Why didn't you tell the police about this from the start?" Emma asks. "Why did you keep this information hidden?" Dave sighs. "Because I was scared," he replies. "I knew something was going on, but I wasn't sure anyone would believe me." As the conversation heats up, Emma feels there's more to Dave's story. The information he reveals raises more questions. "I will find out the truth," Emma says. "And I won't stop until I discover it." From the information received from Dave and Zoe, these two are now the most suspicious in this case, Emma thinks. As the investigation continues, Emma must confront the truth that slowly reveals itself, connecting the pieces of evidence to identify the culprit as soon as possible. Murder in Belver City, Episode 8, Zoe in the Shadows. As everyone starts to question who is behind the shocking murder, Zoe, Nina's close friend, becomes a prime suspect. New information about a conflict between her and Nina deepens the investigation. Emma and Rick head to Zoe's house for clues. Zoe's home has a calm atmosphere, surrounded by a garden with tall trees and colorful flowers. Amid this tranquility, there may be something hidden. Rick, the detective on the case, arrives at Zoe's house early in the morning, looking tense. Upon meeting Zoe, he begins his questioning. "Zoe, sorry for disturbing you so early," Rick says, standing at the front door. "We need to discuss what happened." Zoe, wearing a white robe, looks surprised to see Rick and Emma. She tries to act normal. Why do we need to talk now? She asks, appearing anxious. We've received new information about your argument with Nina, Rick says. We need you to explain this. Zoe invites them in. Come inside, she says. I don't see anything to hide. Rick starts questioning Zoe in detail, asking about the events on the night Nina was killed. Yes, Zoe sighs. We had an argument, but it wasn't a big deal. Nina had her own personal problems, and I don't know what she was going through. Are you sure there's nothing else? Rick asks, showing suspicion. Do you know if anyone else had issues with Nina? Zoe tries to stay calm. I don't know, she replies. Nina had problems with other people. She didn't share the details with me. As Rick continues to question Zoe, Emma discovers a recording of their conversation. The recording reveals a tense discussion between Zoe and others. This recording is key evidence, Emma says, listening to the audio. It shows a deep conflict between Zoe, Nina, and others. Upon learning this information, Rick decides further investigation is necessary. Zoe, do you have an explanation for this conversation? Rick asks, his gaze fixed on her. Zoe's eyes widen. I don't know what you're talking about, she denies. It was just a normal conversation. I did have issues with Nina, but not to the extent of murder. Emma looks at Zoe, sensing insincerity in her response. We need to know the truth, Emma says, and we won't stop until we get answers. Feeling the pressure, Zoe tries to deflect. Meanwhile, Rick and Emma continue to investigate further and seek new clues. Murder in Belver City, Episode 9, Emma's Revealing Truth. In the police station, the brightly lit interrogation room with its cold metal chairs awaited the confrontation. New information about the case was being examined in detail. Emma and Rick sat in the interrogation room, both tense. From the new information just received, Rick felt distressed to learn that Emma was involved in the incident. Emma faced a shocking truth. The newly revealed information raised questions about her involvement in the case. Emma, Rick said, we have new information about you. It appears you were involved with Nina. You need to answer our questions. Emma, sitting at the interrogation table, felt the pressure of the situation. What is this information about me? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Rick placed the documents on the table and began to reveal the details. We just found footage from nearby security cameras, he said. The footage shows you near the crime scene that night. Can you explain why you were there? Emma, her face pale, struggled to come up with an explanation. I don't know. I had a memory lapse due to an accident. I don't recall that time, she said. I might have been there for another reason, but I wasn't involved in the murder. Meanwhile, Zoe was trying to escape Belver City. She knew she was in a dangerous situation and felt the mounting pressure. As Zoe prepared to flee, she discovered information that raised suspicions about Emma. It's time to reveal the whole truth, Zoe said to herself as she went to a place where she hoped to contact someone she trusted. If Emma is guilty, I need to clear my name. Zoe returned to the police station, knowing it would put her in a difficult position. While Rick and Emma were in the interrogation room, Zoe entered, looking anxious. I need to talk to you, Zoe said, about what I saw that night. Rick looked at Zoe with suspicion. Go ahead, he said. We need information that could help solve this case. Zoe took a deep breath, her voice shaking. I saw Emma with Nina that night, she said, but I didn't mention it before because I was scared. Emma, hearing this, felt as though her world was collapsing. Zoe sighed deeply. I was afraid, she explained. Afraid that you would find out I saw something I shouldn't have, and I was scared of being the next target. Rick looked at Emma. Emma, do you have anything to say? Rick asked. This makes us need to verify the facts again. After revealing the truth, Zoe decided to cooperate with Rick. She began to explain what she had seen that night and help Rick investigate the new information that could change everything. "We need to find the truth," Zoe said, "and I'll do whatever it takes to clear my name." Murder in Belver City, Episode 10, The Hidden Clue. Emma, feeling the stress and pressure mounting after becoming a suspect, decides to return to the crime scene to search for new evidence and try to recover her lost memories. Rick, meanwhile, is starting to gather evidence pointing to Emma's possible involvement in the murder. Emma walks into the woods at the crime scene. The cold and dark atmosphere makes searching for evidence difficult. She tries to find something that might help her understand how she was involved in that night's events. "This is the crime scene," Emma murmurs to herself, walking along the path she saw in the surveillance footage. "I need to find evidence. How did I become a suspect?" Emma uses a flashlight to scan the ground, looking for clues that might help uncover the truth. She finds several footprints, some of which seem to match her own shoes. As she searches, she begins to feel strange. Whispers and flashes of memories start appearing in her mind, with images becoming clearer. These images suggest she might have been involved in the murder. "What is the truth?" Emma asks herself, as she looks at the things she had seen that night. At the same time, Rick decides to revisit the crime scene to reassess the situation. As he arrives, he encounters Emma, who is clearly confused and stressed by what she has seen. "Emma," Rick calls out, "what did you see? You seem very shaken." Emma looks up, saying, "I saw images in my memory. It seems like I might have been involved in the murder." Rick looks at Emma. "What did you see?" he asks. "Tell us everything." Emma begins to describe what she saw in her memory, revealing connections to the case. "It's like I was here and had a role that night," she says, "but I can't remember all the details." This makes Rick increasingly suspicious of Emma's role. "We might need to review everything again," Rick says. Murder in Belver City, Episode 11, Memories. At Emma's house. Emma, having seen the images in her memory linking her to the murder, decides to review the events of that night in detail. She feels increasing confusion and stress as she tries to organize her memories. The images in Emma's memory are now clearer. She sees herself in the forest, and Nina is there too. "Why am I seeing this? What happened that night?" Emma asks herself. The next morning, Rick grows increasingly suspicious of Emma. He has evidence pointing to her involvement in the case. "You might need to review everything again," Rick says. "There's something I don't understand," Emma replies. "It seems like another person was involved in the murder, and I might know something important." "We need to find answers soon," Rick says. Emma starts to speak. "I just remembered something from my memory. I went hiking with Nina for a break. Nina and I have known each other since high school. We only meet occasionally now. We went camping in the dark, cold forest, and then someone attacked us." Rick looks at Emma intently. "Explain in more detail," he says. "What do you remember?" Emma begins to describe what she remembers from her memory. She tells Rick about the fear she felt while hiking and encountering a mysterious person whose face she can't recall. The mysterious person seemed to have malicious intent and tried to harm Nina. "I saw him coming closer," Emma says. "He had something in his hand, but I couldn't see what it was. I only knew we had to run." Emma tells Rick that she and Nina tried to escape from the mysterious person. She felt fear and pressure as the person chased them. "I heard a car following us," Emma says. "Finally, my car crashed into a tree. I felt pain and darkness covering everything, and then I woke up with amnesia. I can't remember anything else from that time," she adds. Rick listens carefully and takes notes on everything Emma says. Who do you think the mysterious person might be? Rick asks. Emma shakes her head. I'm not sure. I still can't remember him. But I feel he is connected to Nina's murder. Now, Emma and Rick decide to return to the scene to search for more evidence. Rick drives Emma back to the forest for further investigation. We need to find more evidence here, Rick says, to confirm what you remember. There are tire tracks and signs of a damaged vehicle, Rick says, and there are some debris that might be from the crashed car. We need to find answers, Emma says, to understand what really happened that night. We need to work together, Rick says, to make sure we find the answers. We need to solve this as soon as possible. Murder in Belver City, Episode 12, A Shocking Revelation. In the quiet night of the dark forest, the sound of the wind rustling through the trees creates a silent and mysterious atmosphere. The light from Emma's and Rick's flashlights makes the darkness of the forest appear hazy and tense, as Emma starts to reveal her bloody memories. After Emma begins to recall everything from her memories, she asks Rick to take her back to the crime scene where Nina died to search for the truth. Rick, Emma begins to speak nervously. I need to tell you everything I remember. I want you to understand what really happened. Rick nods. I'm listening. Tell me everything you remember. Emma starts to describe the events from that night in detail. She talks about hiking with Nina on that dark and cold evening. They walked into the forest until they encountered a mysterious figure. She couldn't remember who it was, but he had malicious intent. We were trying to find a way out of the forest, Emma says, but he followed us. He had something in his hand. It looked like a knife, but I couldn't see clearly. We tried to run, but he chased us. While fleeing, she continues, I got separated from Nina, and I heard fighting, Nina's cries for help. I didn't know what was happening, just sounds of violence, Nina's screams, and then silence. I knew I had to keep running, Emma continues. She ran to the car and drove away from the mysterious figure. But he chased us in his car, Emma adds. I drove until the end of the road, and when I tried to drive out, my car crashed into a tree. I lost consciousness and woke up in the hospital with memory loss, she explains. As Emma recounts her memories, Rick starts to act strangely. He squints at Emma with suspicion, and there is a growing tension. Emma, Rick says, you said he had a knife and harmed Nina. Are you sure he was the one who killed Nina? Yes, Emma replies, but I didn't see his face. I only saw his shadow and the knife he was holding. Emma also mentions that Nina told her about some terrifying secrets involving a man, which were related to illegal activities and might be dangerous. Rick starts speaking again. Do you know who that man is? There's something I don't understand. As Rick's tension increases, he reveals that the person Nina mentioned is himself. Emma is shocked. Why did you do this, Rick? How could you? Emma says. Nina came to see me before she died, Rick says with a strained tone. She discovered information related to illegal activities. She knew I was involved with a secret organization that did illegal activities. She wanted to reveal this truth, which would ruin my life. I had no choice but to stop Nina. I couldn't let her reveal what she knew to the city, Rick says. So I had to stop her. I killed her because I didn't know what else to do. Emma starts to feel overwhelmed and disappointed by the shocking revelation. She knows she will have to face the painful truth and understand Rick's actions. I don't know what to do, Emma says with anger and pain in her voice. But you must take responsibility for your actions. Rick tries to explain his reasons and apologize for putting everyone in this situation. He explains the feelings of despair and stress he faced that night. I'm sorry, Rick says with a trembling voice. I shouldn't have done this. I will take responsibility. Murder in Belver City, Episode 13, The Chase in the Dark finale. After Rick revealed the shocking truth about Nina's murder, Emma couldn't accept what had happened and decided to flee from Rick, who was chasing after her. "Emma!" Rick shouted loudly. "Don't think you can escape! I won't let you expose this secret!" Emma ran swiftly through the forest, but she knew Rick was not far behind. She could hear the sound of breaking branches and footsteps getting closer. Emma used all her skills to evade in the woods. She climbed over trees and jumped across fallen branches, trying to use her instincts to find a way out of the situation. But Rick kept following relentlessly, with gunshots ringing intermittently. "Do you think you can escape?" Rick yelled frantically. Emma was injured by sharp branches and stumbled, her legs starting to ache from exhaustion, but she continued to try to run. "No! Don't follow me! Don't do this!" Emma's voice trembled as she ran. "You can't escape!" Rick shouted as he chased her. "You're going to die knowing my secret!" Rick kept pursuing her. "You have no way to escape!" he screamed crazily, while the gun in his hand fired threateningly. As Emma saw that Rick was getting closer, she found a cliff ahead. Her only option was to run to the edge of the cliff, knowing that this could be either her escape or her end. Rick was close behind. "It's over, Emma!" He lunged at her forcefully, but as soon as Rick stepped to the edge of the cliff, he slipped and fell down below. His screams echoed in the darkness. "No! Not!" Rick's body disappeared into the shadows. Emma stood breathing heavily. She was safe, or at least she thought so. She felt relieved that Rick could no longer harm her as she sat resting in the darkness of the forest. The stress and exhaustion gave way to a sense of calm. "It's over," Emma said to herself. "I did it." At last, Emma managed to survive and move on, while Rick had fallen to his death. In the midst of the silence, Emma remained standing at the edge of the cliff, her eyes staring into the darkness below. Suddenly, a cold sensation gripped her heart as forgotten memories began to resurface. She closed her eyes, trying to recall the events of that night, the image of Nina being attacked, the chaos, the screams, and, importantly, Rick wasn't the only one present that night. Suddenly, in her memory, she remembered another person, a shadowy figure with a mocking smile from that night. It wasn't Rick who harmed her, but someone else. Who was that who killed Nina?" Emma slowly stepped back from the cliff, her heart racing. The sense of panic returned. Rick wasn't the real killer. He was just a part of it. As Emma was about to turn and run back, heavy footsteps sounded from behind. "Do you think it's over, Emma?" a chilling voice said. She turned slowly, seeing a figure emerging from the shadows, a face she recognized from that night, the person Nina had discovered the secret of. After that, Emma screamed loudly into the forest, and then the scream fell silent. The mystery remains in Belver City. The people of the city continue to live in fear. Who is the real murderer who killed Nina and Emma?